I'm Tori, and today I am going to be reviewing the My Father's Dragon series. So this is a bind-up of this little children's series. It's not very long, and this includes My Father's Dragon, Elmer and the Dragon, and The Dragons of Blue Land. These books were written by Ruth Stiles Gannett and illustrated by Ruth Gannett. And so there's a little note in the introduction that says that the illustrator was the stepmother of the author, so that's really fun. So I've had this book since I was a small child. There's a note in here that says I got it for Christmas when I was 7 years old. So this was actually, I think, kind of the first real adventure story I ever read as a child, and I just love that so much, getting to watch a character go off on this great, fantastic journey. And I think that's one of the things that really got me started loving fantasy books. And so later, reading things like Harry Potter and The Lord of the Rings and all those fun fantasy things, this is kind of one of those first books like that I ever read. So I've had this book all my life, and I loved it as a child. But I only ever read the first story, and I refused to read any of the other ones. So it was kind of interesting to go through and reread the first story that I loved so much, and then read the other ones, which I had no idea about. So My Father's Dragon is the story of a little boy, and his name is Elmer, but he's always referred to as my father. So you would assume that maybe he is Ruth Stiles Gannett's father, or just some unknown narrator's father, but you know, other characters will speak to him and call him Elmer, but he's always just called my father. So it's kind of fun. It feels like someone's telling you a story that's been passed down through the generations. And so this is the story of this little boy, and he's always wanted to fly, and he thinks maybe when he grows up he'll learn to fly an airplane. And one day he meets a stray cat, and he tells the stray cat about this. And the stray cat tells him, well, you don't have to wait until you're a grown-up to fly, because I know about a baby dragon who is imprisoned on an island, and if you go rescue the dragon, I bet that dragon would let you fly with him. This dragon is being held captive because he lives on an island that is almost completely divided in half by a river, and the animals are too lazy to walk all the way up and around the island to get to the other side, so they use the dragon to fly back and forth across the river. And this island is famous for having no one who's gone there ever survived to tell the tale, except, of course, the stray cat that no one knows about. And so the fun thing is, the cat tells Elmer exactly what to pack and how to survive in these situations. And I loved this story so much when I was little, and I think it was because Elmer didn't fight the animals or do anything to like try to overpower them to rescue the dragon. He was just very clever and managed to outsmart them, and I loved that, and all the crazy things he brought. And so as a kid, I just loved watching this little boy set out. He brings a knapsack filled with some very specific things: chewing gum, 24 pink lollipops, a package of rubber bands, black rubber boots, a compass, a toothbrush and a tube of toothpaste, 6 magnifying glasses, a very sharp jackknife, a comb and a hairbrush, 7 hair ribbons of different colors, an empty grain bag with a label saying cranberry, some clean clothes, and enough food to last my father while he was on the ship. He couldn't live on mice like the cat had. So he took 25 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and 6 apples, because that's all the apples he could find in the pantry. And so he has this very eclectic little packing list, and he goes off on his adventure to meet all these different animals and try to save the baby dragon. And the illustration style on this book is just so much fun, and I loved seeing all the different animals he encountered in the fun way that they're drawn. And so this is a cute little story, and I loved it so much as a child. So you'd think once I finished the first story, I would go straight on to reading the second one, but I never did that as a child. I remember starting it and giving up after like a page every time. And I think the reason for that is that the first story feels very disconnected from the other two. So in this introduction, the author talks about how she wrote the first story just so easily and it just came to her, and then the second two were a little bit harder. The first story was published in 1944, the second one in 1950, and the third one in 1951. So there was a little bit of a time gap, and also she just had to work harder to come up with them. And then I don't know why, but she changes the narration style. So the first book, you hear them talk about my father went and did this and saw the dragon, and my father did this and everything happened. And then the second book starts out with Elmer did this, and Elmer and the dragon were going to go do that. And it's just very kind of jarring, and especially when I was a little kid, I was very picky. I just really didn't like having the narration switch, so that's a little strange that it switches like that. And then I don't actually know if the first story is that much better than the second story, or if I just love the first story so much from my childhood. But because reading these, the first story was a lot of fun, and the second story seems kind of bland by comparison. There's not as much, there's not like a specific mission that the characters are trying to accomplish. They're really just trying to get home, and along the way they have some adventures. And so it seems to just drift and not be quite as exciting. So I don't know if I just got more acclimated to the writing style or what, but then I actually liked the third story quite a bit, and I found it much more enjoyable than the second story. So the first story is about my father, Elmer, rescuing the dragon. The second story is about Elmer trying to get home. And the third story is about the dragon getting home and seeing what's happened since he's been gone. And so the third story has more of a plot going on, and you get to see the other, it's called The Dragons of Blue Land, you get to see the other dragons, and so I had a lot more fun kind of seeing that. So these stories are all really fun. You can get through them very quickly. It's just a little children's novel, so you could read it to kids, or just, sit down and read it yourself very quickly. I love how creative this book is. The art style is a little different and kind of unique. The dragon is described, he's very colorful and fun. And people and places have very, very fun names. So the main character is named Elmer Elevator. And we actually don't find out until the third story what the dragon's name is, but his name is Boris. And his family all have amazing names. My favorite was his sister, who is named Eustacia, which I think is just an awesome sounding name. That's so cool. And they have all these really fun names. And then the places have very fun names. So Elmer, before he goes on this fun adventure, comes from a place called Nevergreen City. And there's a coastal town called Seaweed Bay, and there's a place called Popsicornia. It's just got a very cutesy, fun little spin to everything going on in here. So these stories are just so much fun. My Father's Dragon was a part of my childhood. I read this book over and over again, and I just loved it so much and would recommend it to anyone who has children or is a child at heart.